Welcome to the Writing in Your Jammies podcast. I'm your host, Jeannie Hall, and I'm pursuing my dreams by helping you make your dreams a reality. I'm an author, blogger, podcaster, and life coach who hopes to inspire you to feel better, live happier, and go after your dreams with a vengeance. You can do it. Join me. Hello, and welcome to the Writing in Your Jammies podcast. This is Jeannie Hall, your host, and this is podcast 22, Sharing from the Writing in My Jammies series, part 1. So today I'm sharing from my 4-book Writing in My Jammies series. It's a series of self-help nonfiction personal development books. And these ebooks are all about helping you feel happier and helping you to find more success in your life. And so today I'll be sharing little excerpts from my first 2 books in that series. And that is basically going to explore more of personal development and spirituality in general and the law of attraction specifically. So I'm going to do 2 podcasts. I'm going to do this one, which is going to be part 1, and then I'm going to do my last 2 ebooks for part 2 for next podcast. And what's really interesting is I wrote these books, these little ebooks, about a year ago, almost to the day. And it's interesting because, as if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know I'm a retail manager, and this is November 2017 as I record this. It's less than a week till Thanksgiving, which means Black Friday is the very next day. And then, of course, we have December and Christmas and all the craziness that ensues around then. And what's really interesting to me is the past 2 years, for some reason, in November and December, the times that I have to work more hours than ever, and there's more stress and craziness and things at work more than ever, for some reason, both 2 years in a row now, I have gotten super inspired this time of year. I have no idea why. Some businesses slow down this time of year. Like when I was an insurance agent, I used to sell auto insurance, and around December in particular, it was dead. We basically had no business hardly at all. It was very slow, which was great for Christmas. You could just relax and do your holiday planning and cooking and wrapping presents and all that kind of stuff without having any kind of burden from work, whereas retail is just the opposite. Retail this time of year is super high intensity, stress, lots of busyness, lots of things to do and get done and try and make sales and yada yada blah blah blah. And so it's interesting to me that while I'm in the retail space, that I've been so inspired to do work that is on my entrepreneurial business and in writing. So last year, in November and December, I completed 4 separate ebooks. And one of them, I think I've mentioned before, I finished in less than 24 hours. I got up really early, and before midnight that night, I had basically written, edited, and published to Amazon it was basically 7,000 word ebook. So it's interesting to me that for some reason inspiration is striking and my muse is really active in this busy. You would think it'd be just the opposite, but for some reason that's what is happening. I'm getting very, very inspired at this time of year, and now I'm very inspired to do all these blogs and podcasts this time of year, despite the craziness. So I find that interesting that for some reason, when I have, like throughout the year, whenever I have more time, sometimes I'm not as productive as when, like right now, when it's crazy. For some reason, my productivity goes up and my inspiration is off the charts for some reason. I have no idea. It's something to explore. So when I get the solution and figure out the answer, I'll let you know. But it's interesting too in that it's been a year of self-growth and personal development and taking risks and trying to put myself out of my comfort zone more. And the interesting thing about that and what really fascinates me is that I wrote these words a year ago and I've learned so much since then. But what hasn't changed, like the words that I wrote are still, there's still wisdom in those words. There's still a lot of information and great stuff in those words. But my perspective has changed. So the words didn't change, obviously, in the last year. I haven't gone back and changed them. But what I have changed is my perspective. So what I'm actually able to do now is to look back at what I wrote and see a lot more wisdom and perspectives on how to interpret them. So that's kind of what I'm going to be sharing today as well. So the first ebook I'm going to share from is my very first one that I wrote. Before that, I wrote 2 romantic thrillers, which are completely fiction and much longer, and I enjoyed writing those so much. But my heart and my brain have been pulled toward this helping people stuff that I'm doing now. So the whole life coaching thing, which is really recent, and then all the blogging and podcasts were for personal development reasons and nonfiction, and helping you guys to hopefully be happier and learn how to make yourself happier and live your dreams. So my first book is the title is How to Feel Better, No Illegal or Legal Substances Required. So I kind of got a kick out of that title. I thought it was fun that, it's a lot of people use a lot of different things to try and feel better. And I find that really interesting. And now looking at that title in particular, now I know that another word for that is like Brooke Castillo, the life coach, uses the word buffering for, the things that we do to avoid feeling bad. If we are feeling bad, we tend to overdo certain things or do certain things so that we don't feel bad, so that we avoid feeling bad. So those things could be anything from doing drugs, which was kind of the illegal substances I was talking about, or it could be perfectly legal things like overeating, which is my personal buffer. Maybe for you it's drinking. Maybe for you it's overworking yourself. Maybe it's just avoiding dealing with something. So you keep doing something else to keep yourself busy so that you tell yourself you don't have time to deal with that. There's a lot of different ways that we buffer and keep things from actually getting better. And the problem is at a certain point you'll look at your life and say, I'm really, really unhappy. And the only person who can change that is you. So I'm going to share a little excerpt from my first chapter in that book. Happiness doesn't come from being published. It doesn't come from a job. It also doesn't come from, ducking my head, money. You know what else? Though I love my husband to pieces, total happiness doesn't come from my marriage or relationship either. We think it does. We invest lots of time and energy on those beliefs, but they're not true. My happiness comes from within me, and your happiness must come from within you. So that's my little excerpt. And a year ago, I really did understand what I wrote intellectually on a high mind level, on a rational, logical level. I totally understood. But what has changed over the past year is that those words have really begun to sink in, basically. And the universe since then has provided me with examples specifically. And so one of those examples is something that Brooke Castillo calls the watcher. She basically talks about the fact that we are spiritual beings in human form. And as such, we can separate ourselves from our real selves, which is our spiritual selves, from our bodies a little bit. We can, if you focus, you can back off of what is currently happening in your life and take the sting out of it and take the intensity out of it so that you can look at it as if you're observing it and not experiencing it yourself. And as you probably know, watching something happen to someone and experiencing it happening to you are two very different things. So if you can pull yourself out of that experiencing situation, especially if you're going through something really painful, and you can back away from that a little bit and watch yourself go through it instead, it can give you some perspective and some ability to cope that you wouldn't have had before. So, for example, I recently injured my left hand, and it had to be in a brace and in a wrist brace so that it wouldn't move around so much. And it caused me enough pain that I really couldn't use my hand or my wrist on my left hand at all. And since I'm a southpaw, I am left-handed. So that was kind of a pain in the butt. It was a nuisance to have to do that and not be able to use my hand. So one day at work, when it was really aching and throbbing one day, I tried to picture myself as separate from my body. Just like Brooke said, I tried to become the watcher. And as the watcher, I saw my physical body experience that pain, but I realized it wasn't really happening to me because I'm separate from that body because, again, I'm a spiritual being. And looking at it that way really lessened the intensity of the pain. It gave me some space to look at my situation. And it's not that it took away all the pain, and it's not, or even reduce it significantly in my body. It didn't really. What it changed was the way I was looking at my pain and the way I felt my pain. And then I was able to deal with it much easier. I could cope where I wasn't coping very well before. All I could think about was ow, 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 the pain. And whenever I backed away from it and became more of the watcher, it became much easier to deal with and to focus on other things. And this can work in lots of different situations, especially just in general. I think it's a good thing to try to do is to stop being in the midst of your life, especially if your life is not happy and you're suffering in some way or in a lot of ways. If you can pull yourself away from that and remember that you're really a spiritual being and you chose to come onto this planet in human form because you wanted to experience all the highs and lows of being a human being. You wanted this. We all did, or we wouldn't be here. And you do have the strength and the power and the intelligence and the bravery and everything else that it takes to be here. You do. It's deep down inside of you, but you do have it, and you can use it to improve your life and to cope with things that are hard to deal with. So remember, we are not our bodies. This is a physical thing that we're inhabiting, but we are not our bodies. And most of us believe in afterlife experiences and different things like that. And it's up to you what you believe on that. But I think it's very helpful when you can separate out that the body and the mind are two different things. And the spirit can remove itself from the body a little bit and remember that it's separate. So then we're able to undergo pain and emotional trauma and survive because we realize we are not that pain. We are not in that pain. We can experience pain and trauma, but then it's over. Then we're okay, and we realize we can come out the other side. And it may physically damage us in some way, but it never touches us spiritually because it can't. Because our spirits are perfect and untouchable. And that can give you a lot of comfort to realize that. It's like, this may have happened to me in my life, and it caused this harm and this damage. But my spirit is still flawless. It's still perfect. That can give you a lot of comfort. And then when you remember you're a spiritual being and go out into your life again, you can deal with things easier and feel better. So again, when you're unhappy or experiencing emotion that you don't like, remember what you are. Remember that you are a spiritual being. You can be the watcher and separate yourself partly from your body so you're not in the midst of it. And it helps even in situations where maybe it's not a physical pain or something like that. Maybe it's just a stressful situation. If you can back away from that situation, go, wait. I'm a spiritual being. Everything is actually fine. If something happens to my body, it happens. But I don't have to stress over it because what is actually separate from me. So yes, I'm experiencing it, but no, it doesn't have to kill me. Okay? Nothing can kill your spiritual your spiritual form because you are eternal. So that can be a great comfort, and you can use that technique to get yourself through difficult situations. And remember, you choose what thoughts you want to have. You choose how you think about what happens to you and what you do on a daily basis, because those thoughts then dictate the feelings that you have and that you generate. And you can choose to feel happy no matter what. There are lots of people on this planet who are happy a lot of the time, and they've had things happen to them that are horrific, really horrific. Some of the happiest people as adults had some of the most horrific things happen to them as children. What they did is they learned how to focus on their happiness and how to forgive and how to love themselves. I do look at different examples. Maya Angelou was horribly abused as a child and didn't speak for several years because of it. That was a horrible, horrible trauma, a horrible physical assault on her. And a lot of people think, if that happened to me, I wouldn't survive it. Here's the thing, you're stronger than you think. And she was incredibly strong when she was alive, and she is so inspiring to so many of us because she came out the other side of that trauma and triumphed and became a kind and wise person that shared her wisdom and advice with us in her poetry and in her books and just in her story. So, it doesn't matter how bad it was, whatever it was that happened, you can move past it if you choose to move past it. And no one can control or change your thoughts or feelings unless you let them. They don't have control over your thoughts or feelings unless you give that control over to them. So don't do that. You keep the control. You choose. Choose the emotion that makes you feel better, whatever that emotion is, and choose to be happy. Okay, so now I'm going to share from my second ebook in the series. This one is called How to Let Feelings Be Your Friends. And this one is from chapter 5, Joy. We are all here to create, and that act of creation brings us such joy, elation, ecstasy even. We have all had the pleasure of looking upon something we've created and feeling pride in it, whether it was a hand-built birdhouse, a painting, a poem, or even a child. The act of creation is what we do. As The Secret's Rhonda Byrnes so wisely says, if you are thinking, you are creating. We don't have to work hard to do this. We are automatically doing this every second. We are co-creating our lives with the universe. This truth makes some nervous. They feel their lives are subpar and wonder if they're to blame. If this is you, don't blame yourself. I felt bad about this too at first. Before you became conscious of what you were creating, you couldn't do anything about it. You didn't know how life worked. The fabulous thing about learning about the law of attraction is that we gain understanding about our power. And once we start to understand it, we can begin to wield it. Okay, so that's my second excerpt. And the thing about our emotions that's so awesome, this is so cool, y'all, seriously. I mean, we get to choose our lives. We get to choose our emotions and our thoughts. And that is so empowering. Just think about that. Because I really, very recently, just a couple days ago actually, had a lady tell me that she's just an impatient person and that her impatience isn't a choice, it's just who she is as a person. And I thought that was really interesting for her to say that. Because if she isn't choosing to be patient or impatient, then who is choosing it for her? Right? I mean, patience is about responding to your current circumstances with either grace, which is, of course, patience. And I realize that it's very difficult to respond with patience sometimes. I get it. Or you might respond with frustration and the need to rush, which, of course, is impatience. But patience is something we can practice and improve. So let's say you're in a store waiting behind an elderly person with a cane. And when she gets to the register, she proceeds to slowly pull out a checkbook, even though every bank account now comes with a debit card, which is much faster to use. And even more slowly begins to write a check. And you watch her. And she writes with these awkward arthritic fingers that take a long time to fill out her information on the check, and it's excruciatingly slow. And when she's finally finished, the cashier asks her for her ID. And she has this massive purse, and she has to dig and dig through it, and she can't seem to find her ID. And you huff under your breath. Why do these things always seem to happen to you? Right? That's your thought. Your thought is, oh, right? Why is this always why is it this lady in front of me? Why is she taking so long? Why does she have to be in front of me? Why do I get stuck behind this woman? Right? So many of us would get frustrated and impatient under these circumstances. But here's something we need to consider. Why? Why are we impatient? Does feeling that way help the elderly lady to write or to move faster? Does it heal her arthritis? Make her young again? I think we know the answer to that. Does it get you down the line further? Does it help you get through the door faster? No. So is it helpful to be impatient? Does impatient help you in any way? Impatience. Yeah, I think we know the answer to that too. Our thoughts are under our control, no one else's. So rather than feeling frustrated by this lady's writing speed, maybe we could take a deep breath and focus on something else. Look at the grand scheme of things. Or you could choose to go to another cashier, or you could step away and look around for a couple minutes more to distract yourself. Usually whatever we're rushing around for isn't a life or death situation anyway. For some reason in our society today, we seem to think that everything has to happen now. It's crazy. Why? It's a habit. It's a habit to think, no, we have to go now. Sometimes we don't even have to be anywhere. We're just in a rush. Why? Step back from that. Put your watcher on again. Step back and be a watcher of your own life and say, why am I doing that? Really question it and think about your answer. Before we learn about a teaching like the law of attraction, we don't realize that our emotions create our reality. We don't. But afterward, after we have that knowledge, and you have that knowledge now if you're listening to this, we have to take responsibility for our emotions and our thoughts. So that woman who told me that her impatience wasn't a choice, when she told me that, I could tell from her facial expression that she believed it. She believed what she was telling me. But the truth of the matter is that she is choosing to avoid taking responsibility for her own feelings. But the thing is, and I'm not judging her, the thing I'm saying is, by doing that, she is disempowering herself. I'm not saying you should beat yourself up for a decision that may have given you an outcome you didn't want. We all, trust me, I certainly do. We all have lots of instances throughout our lives of decisions we can look back on and say that was a bad decision. That led to this and that sucked. Okay? Most of it. I'm sure I can't imagine any of us not having that in our life. We're all human. We're all here to learn. And we're all here to make the mistakes that help us to learn. So of course, we've made those mistakes. And so don't blame yourself. Don't beat yourself up over it. You didn't know at the time that you were doing that. Be gentle with yourself on all things, because it's most important to love yourself. And blame is not helpful, and neither is feeling guilty. Those are two very negative emotions that really don't serve us. Blaming someone and yourself doesn't help, and neither does feeling guilt over it. It just festers and makes you sick, actually, a lot of the time. But what is helpful and what does empower you is taking responsibility for how you feel. Being impatient is a choice, just like being patient is a choice. It may not be easy to be patient, but you can do it. And once you've done it, you'll feel better for having done it. It's an accomplishment. It's an achievement. You made a good decision. And that's what self-growth and personal development are all about. And the more you learn to control what you think and what you feel, the more you'll grow and the more understanding you'll have overall. Then when you choose to feel something, you'll choose to feel what you want, which is going to be good or happy or elated even. And isn't that the whole point of life anyway? All right, I'm going to wrap up the podcast, guys. Did this podcast help you today? I really hope so. Do you have any questions for me? If so, please leave a comment on my blog, or I would love to get a review from you on whatever service you're listening to this podcast on, or again, you can go to my blog and leave one. I'd love to hear from you. So if my little ebooks, they're only $2.99 each. If those interest you and you're interested in them or in purchasing them, my Writing in My Jammies series is available on Amazon, and you can click on the little pictures in the show notes of the book covers, and that'll lead you right to them. So everybody, take care. Have a wonderful day, week, month, and year. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for listening to this podcast. Go to writinginyourjammies.com to sign up for my brand new Rejuvenation for Writers 6-week comprehensive program to help writers reignite their creative sparks. You're just a free mini session away from becoming the amazing author you've always wanted to become. You really can be whoever you want to be. Thanks again.